Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the FSHD Society's Fitness Squad, I think is what we named it last week, the Fitness Squad, with Bill Herzberg and Mitch Wade. It's funny, right? They'll be with us today and for one more session next week live. And so without further ado, we can get started. So take it away, gentlemen.
Excellent. Hello. We are obviously happy to be back. We've been having a very good time, the last couple of weeks here, going over some different exercises. Today we put together a couple of different things for you, kind of involving a little bit more of the shoulders and the chest. I have a couple, I'm hoping I get the second part loaded, but I got a couple exercises that kind of go back and touch base on some of the basics. Something I want to remind people as well. We don't want to forget what made us feel better at the beginning or made us stronger. We want to go over those things. Maintenance is also a good thing. Progression is great, but maintaining things are also, a good focus to have too. So, Bill, I'm going to let you come on and say hello, and then you'll shortly get the videos rolling after that.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad that people are still interested in hearing what Mitch and I have to say about exercise and FSH. We remain enthusiastic and optimistic and hope that many of you will start exercising, because it's been fruitful for me. And I'm very grateful to Mitch for helping me out this way.
Absolutely. So we're going to have to go in a little bit of a reverse order here. I'm hoping it's actually maybe in about 15 seconds we should get the other videos too. But this is going to be our first set of videos here. It looks like the screen might be on the other side. That's not great. So hopefully we have, it's because of that one. So you'll have to kind of envision this one. We adjusted for the next one. You can see what Bill's doing here is just warming up. And you know what? I'm going to reset here because the other one's just loaded up here too. So let's go like this. So we'll start from the very beginning. Bill, you don't have to demonstrate as much as I was saying you were maybe going to have to, so we're good. This is what I kind of was talking about with some of the basics. This is Bill doing we call them rainbow rotations. So rainbow rotations are allowing him to kind of feel his arm, his arm bone, his shoulder complex rather, of rotation there going overhead. A big cue I say a lot to him is wherever your arm bones go, let the scapula try and follow to your shoulder blade. It's a good little warm up for him, not just, brain connection, but actually getting the muscles to kind of fire there as well. Bill, what would you say this one has helped us with in the sense of how much we talk about you being able to go overhead now?
Well, I wasn't able to do this initially. When I tried doing this the first time, even with the TRX, I kept on hitting my face as my arm would collapse. But the tension on the rope allows you to somehow control the movement a little bit. So it breaks down the overhead movement, it simplifies it. And now what had been a very difficult maneuver for me, an impossible maneuver, is just part of my warm-up.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So that kind of gets us, lined up a little bit for some mobility. We do focus a couple of times where I'll tell them to up on top, try to hold it or go down slow. So we're kind of talking, more in the sense of some stability at that point when he's able to keep it in a certain point, control the way down or pause maybe at a certain point on the way down. Makes it pretty difficult there too. Going into the next one, we have him playing with a physio ball. He is standing right now. I do believe I have him sitting as well. So I kind of want to start with this one. This is a little bit more of a simpler version. We do not have to be standing and having balance. So, that takes away the thought there. And what we're doing is really just trying to engage the pec muscles, your chest muscles. When he's trying to pull, the elbows in, almost doing kind of like a fly on a machine. But I just have him pinching the ball. So really anything works. We tried with a yoga block first, wasn't quite big enough. So just got something a little bit larger. I think any kind of a ball, basketball, soccer ball, if you have one at home, would work fine. A small physio ball like the one that we're using in the previous picture, you'll see that again shortly, would work just fine. Really, it's just the idea of having something called an isometric contraction. And we talked about this a few weeks ago. To clarify that, go ahead, Bill.
When Mitch is patting the chest muscle, that really helps me engage the pectorals, because this is a very difficult exercise for me. Even a little bit of force towards the ball is hard for me to generate. I almost don't know how to contract those muscles. So the little bit of padding on the chest helps turn them on. I can't emphasize that enough. That was is very helpful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. To go back real quick though, to clarify, an isometric contraction is when we are contracting the muscles without actually moving the joints. So, you know, he's not actually moving in a fly motion, which is really like the elbows going out and then back in towards each other. You know, we're just keeping him in one spot, pushing against the ball. So it gives him some time to feel that contraction. And then like Bill was saying, you know, I'm not just trying to, you know, poke at him. Rather, it's more so touching the muscle, letting his brain feel that connection of, you know, the actual palpation of my hand to his muscle. And then he has a better, you know, chance. And we've had some really good, you know, success with muscle contraction after that. So we're going to go to the previous exercise here. This is where I have Bill standing. You maybe saw in the previous video that I did, you know, take my eyes to his lower back, as a lot of times when people like to engage in the chest or the shoulders, will almost tilt backwards, and then that kind of takes away that lower abdominal, you know, activation, which is something we covered last week. The dead bugs, the core bracing, you know, refer to those videos. I do believe on the FSHD website, or either on my Instagram, which you can see the name up on top here. These videos will remain for a long time. So, but the same kind of idea here. You can now see me adjusting Bill a little bit as he started to push there. You can see what he did, and this is a great example as a progression from what we worked on last week. You know, Bill has good communication to his body now. We're working on the chest, but that doesn't mean that we all of a sudden lose the concept of what we had here before. Bill, can you go over that a little bit and kind of talk about how it's a little harder to keep that position when standing compared to sitting?
Well, anytime that you decrease or increase the degrees of freedom, there's more supporting musculature that has to stay in place. So it's a lot easier to do an exercise when you're sitting and you just isolate it. But if you're standing and you have to maintain the support, or if your shoulder girdle has to be in a certain position, it's obviously much more difficult. So and plus there's a little bit of room for me to cheat, and it's almost as if I can support the ball with my belly. I don't know why I do that, Mitch. Why do you think that my lumbar lordosis kicks in when I?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily just you. It's a very common pattern I see with really anybody. It's whenever we kind of go, you know, elbows up, you know, you have a hard time lifting the elbows up and remaining that position. So to get those elbows up and not have to necessarily hold them up, it's easy to then rock back in the body, which then just takes it's really from the low spine. Sometimes you can do it from the hips, but you can do it much more from the low spine, which is creating that hyperlordosis.
I've extended these exercises, Mitch, with some 1 pound weights, and I've done some flies, which work some of the same muscles that these isometric exercises are doing.
Absolutely.
I lie on the gymnastic ball, draped, you know, with my arms draped to the sides, and the 1 pound weight is hard. I can do it without any weight at all, and 5 pounds is at this point too hard for me to do on a regular basis. But I believe in the progress.
But we're making progress though there too.
Yeah.
Not just in the sense of, you know, motor control, which, and what I mean by that is, you know, when he's making the action, which you'll see here in a second as well. We do some pretty fun exercises that I refer to as the Mr. Miyagi. Bill will know what I'm talking about. It shows a good sense of proprioception. Proprioception means body awareness for the most part, you know, knowing where your body is in space, you know, and controlling that. So when I don't have Bill, you know, I'm referring back to about week 3, we used that dowel, the dowel to keep controlled where he could feel it. But when there's no dowel, we still need him to keep the control, you know, and sometimes if that assistance is gone, it's harder to do. But that is definitely another spot where we're progressing there too, with some of these exercises helping a lot. So here's another one. This one's fun. It's a little bit back towards the basics, but you know, you can see the difference of Bill's control. Watch though at the very beginning, we'll probably have to wait for that to reset. Actually, Bill still does it a little bit right there. You can see as he opens his arms, it's easy for him to go into a little bit of that hyperlordosis. We can arch. It's okay to arch. I don't need you to be, you know, completely stiff in the center. Our muscles want to be loose and reactive. But in that sense, he can't necessarily take away, you know, core activation. It needs to lengthen when he does that, not just load into the low back. And there is a difference there. And that's where people need to, you know, pick the right exercises for you to progress. You know, do you start with the dead bugs first? Is that a better idea? And then come to this so that he has a connection between his core before he tries to go and do this. So, you know, this might not have been our very first exercise that we did, you know, this day. This is just more of what we're showing you for the focus. So a full workout does always include some of the, you know, activation exercises. Bill, would you say you have a couple of activation exercises that you do on a daily basis because it's beneficial for your movements?
I'm trying to warm up my hamstrings and do stretches there. I'm doing little bit of biceps curls, wrist extensions with light weights, and some of the abdominal exercises that we reviewed last week. I do those pretty much on a daily basis. And then when I'm near a wall, and I'll do something similar to what we did with the TRX. Mitch, I want to interrupt a second. We have a couple of questions from Daniel Crossout. Where can you get the equipment for that rainbow exercise for the arms?
Yep. The TRX, I do believe it's just trxtraining.com. You know, if you just go to Google and type in TRX training resistance exercise, I do believe training resistance straps. TRX is suspension trainer, I do believe, is what it'd be really specific there. It'll pop up. I want to say some of the, you know, top of the line ones are maybe around $200. I want to say you can maybe get some straps that are a little bit more simple if you're not putting a bunch of weight into it. There's a lot of different exercises you can do with these. Then those are around like $99. There's, for the most part, when you buy them, they have a little attachment that goes over top of a door frame. So you can do it really anywhere. Do be careful what door you choose though. Closet doors and stuff like that are not necessarily the best option, as it's really just a small little hinge that's keeping you there. So maybe like a front door, you know, something a little bit more sturdy, but be careful there of what you choose. But yes, they are great, you know, travel, you know, they fit in a very small little duffel bag. I believe I gave one to Bill, my old one, and they take it to the beach and back because it's so, you know, convenient to have.
Yes, you did. We really do appreciate that. Hey, you seem to have a little bit of a gravity flux problem in your studio. Is that something you can correct by turning your Instagram feed or tilting your?
No, I think I would have had to do it on here. So I had them all set up, but I think it was more maybe the technical difficulty of reposting them.
Okay.
So
I have
no,
another.
I don't think so. You
no,
just have to lock your screen and then tilt it the other way.
There's another.
I will get them cleaned up though and repost.
There's another question from someone who has a scapular fusion on the right. On the warm-up activity, he asked, you mentioned engaging the scapula. Is that true for scapulas that have been fused? I would think that it's probably not at all useful for the fused scapula, but I'll defer to you, Mitch. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I'm going to second that. I mean, you know, the scapula rotates and it does move. You know, a lot of the rotator cuff muscles are attached from the scapula to the arm bone. So with it fused there, you know, you probably don't really, you know, I wouldn't really recommend necessarily going overhead, but I don't really know what the procedure is either of a fused scapula. Like, what are they doing with the rotator cuff muscles? Is it okay to go overhead? Are the, you know, are certain muscles still present? So that's something I'm not familiar with, and I would need to know a little bit more about the specific surgery to give you a, you know, a specific answer there. But if I would go more like what Bill said of having a wall close, you know, and maybe doing some slides there. where you get a little bit of movement in the arm bone, which would, and then play, you know, muscles that attach from the arm bone to the scapula. So you're at least playing with the muscles, but the movement of the joint doesn't sound like that's a, you know, one doable or a very good idea to try to make happen.
Thank you. I think that's
okay. I mean, you know, I can break that into a little bit more of an answer there too, but I think that would, it would be a little bit more anatomical of talking specific things. So if the person would like to email me, I'm happy to chat with them some more there. Get us backloaded. So I'm going to go to the previous one here. Let's see. Okay. So here's the progression exercises that first loaded here. This one, of course, yes, I'm going to need to, you know, get a couple of these tilted. So once again, I'm going to try to go over this. If you have a phone that locks the screen, lock your screen and just tilt it right now. I'll get these revised. We had a technical difficulty. We've had it for the last couple of weeks. I need to try to figure something out of loading them. So I had to do a whole different load and get them on. But what you can see here is Bill, he's just doing a chest press. He's doing it very efficiently.
Hey, Mitch, we're not seeing your screen.
Oh.
Yeah, now.
It should be back. We're looking okay there?
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, of course. Thank you. So he's got a dowel in his hands there. He's got great grip strength, so I feel confident, obviously, of walking away from him. He is doing just a chest press. So really, we're warming it up. The dowel probably weighs about maybe 2.5, 3 pounds. This is much more for the motor control. There's certain times he probably does better actually with a little bit more weight because it gives him more feedback. So this is purely motor control and bringing his hands right over top. So, you know, you can see how he kind of goes up and down, pauses on the top, make sure he maintains the stability. He has a tendency of kind of pressing overhead, getting a little bit of some different areas and taking it away from the chest. So I have him trying to go completely vertical. If he loses that stability, he brings it back. A broomstick would be a decent replication of here. If you don't have a bench or you don't feel comfortable going on a bench of not falling left or right, do it on the ground, do it on your bed, whatever is totally fine. Have the intent of putting your arms over above your chest and maintaining that stability from the shoulders. Bill, I feel like you had a moment where you told me once where, you know, you would almost kind of wake up you know, in the morning and do some of these overhead just to kind of warm up some of those muscles.
Well, I was so delighted that I could lift my arms overhead that I didn't want to risk losing that ability. And I mean, I can't stress enough how much this has made me happy or optimistic that I wasn't, you know, facing inevitable decline. So I would practice this in the mornings, and Judy would ask me, would stir awake and say, what in the hell are you doing? But
you know, you didn't say Mitch told me. Mitch made
no,
me.
I didn't blame you. Don't worry. So yeah, I would practice this, and this would feel great.
It's awesome, Bill. Very, very cool. So yeah, that progresses into something that we call the Mr. Miyagi. Mr. Miyagi comes from a movie. I do apologize again. All these are sideways. I will do the best I can to try to get that figured out here very quickly as soon as we finish. But this is the Mr. Miyagi comes from the sense of having the weights on the side. It's a weight that kind of bounces. So he has a little bit more of a, you know, kind of different feedback of the lack of stability because the weights can kind of go up and come down and bounce on the band. As you can see, I'm really not doing too much. Control is huge. It's easy to drop the weights. But then excuse me, it's easy to drop the weights and you know, much harder than control on the way down there too. Yeah, see, I need to not watch this. That's really good, Bill. I mean, it's pretty awesome. That one rep you went up and completely had, you know, solid extension in the elbows, which is, you know, he's going to have some tricep function there. I posted this like a long video on purpose. This is hard. This is not easy. You know, we do these exercises on purpose. I like him to feel some failure in certain spots so that we know when we actually have some success as well, because we've reached those spots where we, you know, previously failed. You know, giving feedback. I then came over after a couple, you know, gave him a little bit more of a touch. You can see my hands are not closed, but giving him enough to kind of make that, you know, action happen. It's his body doing it, though. It is completely his body doing it. So, and there it goes again. So I think it's going to reset again here in a moment. But Bill, what kind of feedback does it come from a difference of just doing the chest press and then having some weight, especially ones that bounce on the side?
Oh boy, this is so much more difficult. It's hard to anticipate where the force is going to be. It's a dynamic process. It's not fixed. It's more like the exercises we do where we're kind of wrestling with the dowel, as opposed to like a fixed machine-like movement where you can anticipate where the resistance is going to be. And this is more a real life kind of exercise.
Yeah. These first couple here are great too. You can see where he gets up and, he gets that complete lockout and maintains the whole thing. And that's something that Bill and I have been working on for a really long time. So it's awesome to see.
Mitch, there's a couple of questions from the audience. Eileen asks that how many trainers or physical therapists know how to do these with FSHD patients? She would love to do these exercises, but assumes that there's not many people who are trained to do this with the FSHD population. And that was certainly the case. I don't expect any PT or trainer to know how to do this. You need to find someone who's willing to learn and is willing to work with you.
I think that's definitely the key there. I like Bill though too. We're friends. We weren't friends beforehand, but I think we have mentioned that before of building a relationship. With the person is huge. So finding somebody that's willing to do some of the research and become familiar with it. If you would have asked me that question 4.5 years ago, I mean, I wouldn't have really had an answer for you. Because I was, unaware of the disease for one, and two, it's really, I had a foundation of knowledge of how the body works, and then me and Bill just kind of, we did a guess and check for the most part, but with the instant feedback and then not going to some things too soon, we built the program. The programs of what workouts need to be for anybody and everybody is just to try to improve their quality of life, improve their quality of movement. The numbers and stuff like that will come with it, but it's really, building foundations is, the biggest part. And, I say this to people all the time, the sense of like when someone builds a house, the foundation takes a long time, and then all of a sudden you look over and all the walls are up, and, that's kind of the way it goes. And sometimes it's starting really simple with some people. Sometimes some others are more advanced and you can go there. Here's a couple examples here. I've had some contacts with some people from this society, and I'm going to start this week with a 9-year-old and a 16-year-old. So, how are they affected? I'm not too sure. I would assume, the latter on we go, sometimes the worse it's going to get. So where do I start with them? Well, it's really just about, creating what's a little bit of a challenge for them. I obviously need to build, like I said, that relationship and that rapport so that we can talk and have some good feedback, because some things, are difficult to find if we don't have the answers from both sides. So, Bill has done such a good job. Earlier when I asked him about, doing things at home, you've got to be consistent. He does those things at home because, like you said, it makes him feel better. It makes him move better. And he was so happy when he started to see some of those things. Then he had the concern of them going away. For the most part, things go away a lot of times on disuse. So if we can keep things consistent there, it makes a big deal.
Thank you, Mitch. There's another question from Daniel, who asks, at the beginning of the exercise journey, how are you able to activate your biceps? Would you please demonstrate how to do biceps curls? When I was just starting out with Mitch, I could not activate my biceps. I could sort of fling my arm up to my mouth. I could contract my biceps, but not against gravity. So I could stabilize my elbow on the table and then move my arm across. But I did have some brachioradialis strength. And then Mitch had me do very low weight curls, and then began to isolate the biceps, and he began to feel biceps contraction. And I didn't believe Mitch when he said that he could feel my biceps. And he had to prove to me by isolating the biceps that it was working. And Mitch, you want to go over some of those exercises, or I can sort of demonstrate the
No,
bicep
no,
curl?
absolutely. Yeah, let's have you demonstrate. I think that's a great idea. You know, I'm always gonna have to tell the story though of when Bill first saw the bicep contract in the mirror, and it was awesome. He was stoked. That was really the point where he knew, you know, it was a bicep. You know, the belly of the bicep. The belly of the bicep was showing. You could see kind of that like line in the you know, in the upper arm. And you know, that was just a point where all of a sudden I think it kind of turned into a motivating factor for him too, you know. And using those things for motivation are great. You know, we all have to have certain things where we can find that intrinsic motivation. And you know, sometimes results, sometimes, you know, visible physical results are key as well. And whatever it is that's going to work for you, you know, take it away. It's awesome. So
Well, how do I can you see me on the on your screen?
I'll have to take this off real fast and
Yeah,
stop
we
sharing
can see you, Bill. We
screen.
can see you, your trunk.
Oh, okay. So let me, because I can't see myself on the screen, so to know where to stand. So this is a 5-pound weight, and I admit I was able to do brachioradialis with the thumb up, but I wasn't able to do biceps with the thumb, with the palm up. And now I'm able to do it with a 5-pound or a 10-pound weight. What's important, you can cheat, and cheating is allowed, but over time, Mitch was very, very much emphasizing form and the ability to control the movement, not just in the contraction phase, but also in the relaxation phase. And this is still somewhat hard for me. So I could bring up the arm, and then can I drop it down slowly without the whole arm collapsing?
Exactly. So Bill, that, you know, just to clarify that a tad bit, you know, eccentric training, there's eccentric and concentric. When the muscle becomes short, that's usually when it's concentric. And then when we're lengthening, that is more of an eccentric action. So when you do a bicep curl, because we had a little bit more success at the very beginning with eccentric training. So he would bring the weight up to the top of the shoulder and then drop down. But at the very, very beginning, we didn't have a weight in the hand. So then he would just bring it up, and then I would push down. And I want him to try to feel the bicep still engaging, still holding the bones, going in the action where it's at, but it's just in a different, it's you know, fighting against gravity in a different way. So it still works that muscle. And that was actually one of the ways that we really had it kind of start to almost kind of throw a signal that he felt and then he saw. And that was, you know, huge for him too. So I think kind of the you know, different approach there, kind of coming from different angles is key as well. You know, your body might not like, you know, everybody's a little bit different. So your body might, you know, react to something different than somebody else would. I'm going to go back to the Zoom and share my screen again. I can go.
Mitch, when you were showing Bill and the dowel with the weights hanging off the side, yeah, this one.
Yep,
We got
yep.
Daniel had a question about what weights are hanging off the side there? What's the weight?
Those are 5 pounds. Those are 5 pounds, and then with the bouncing effect, you know, I almost put an extra pound there, just because it's kind of a different reaction effect there. So I would probably say we got anywhere up towards about 12 to 12 and a half pounds, including the dowel piece.
One more question about this exercise as well. From Facebook Live, somebody there wants to know, when doing a chest press, should I focus on pressing my back against the bench?
I've got to say, I've got to say that's not my favorite cue. You know, I'm gonna put it this, and it's not I don't want to say it's a bad cue. It's not one that I would use to allow the person to try to do this exercise efficiently. If you give people too many cues, you know, if I gave somebody 10 cues, they might remember 2. But if I give them 3 or 4, they oftentimes remember the 3 or 4. And 3 or 4 might even be too many for certain people. So just, you know, we got to break down the exercise as well. If the whole You know, if both of his limbs can't move at the same time, we got to start single, you know, so break down things just in general. But with the cue of pushing your back into the bench, I think it might give Bill a little bit too much of that sense of hyperlordosis. It is okay for his low back to come off the bench here, but I still need his core to be active. I don't want his spine, his low spine, to have a bunch of movement. So I usually tell, just for myself and with my clients, I tell people to push the weight away from them. You know, push the ground away from you in a push-up. You know, obviously the ground is not moving, you know, but it's kind of that same concept. I like the firing coming from, you know, you got to know that you're pushing from your mid chest area and trying to allow for you to push that weight away from you. I have heard that cue before, and I think for very advanced power lifters, you know, that's more of where I've heard that cue in, and fantastic. But you know, sometimes we're really just trying to get some of the simple muscles to fire before we're going to get, you know, a really heavy load. So I don't necessarily always use that one, but once again, I'm not saying it's a bad cue. It just, every cue is different for different people.
Some of the cues that we focused on with this have been related to holding my wrists in extension, which is hard for me.
Totally.
And as well as sort of breaking the stick, sort of finishing with external rotation. Is that the correct rotation? Yep. at the shoulder?
Yep. Absolutely. And it'll be a cue. Sometimes I'll tell them to try to break the stick in half, which sometimes will create external rotation. So, but just like Bill is saying, those are cues for Bill. So, you know, I don't use those cues for, you know, everybody else either. So it's really, there's a lot of very common cues, absolutely. But there are for sure, you know, little specific ones to some people as well. So, you know, create what works best for you. If driving down, think about driving down, you know, allows the shoulders to stay in a good spot and the low back to stay in a good spot. Absolutely. And hopefully that didn't confuse you more by me kind of agreeing and disagreeing, but you know, I really just want to paint that picture again that everybody has some different cues. Here's one that I don't have to fix. Here's a good straight up view now. This is a progression here to, you know, something that Bill and I did a long time ago. We call this the sword swing. This was probably one of our first, you know, 10 exercises that we did at the gym. It did not look like this, but it had the same intention. Sometimes I'll call this the bowler squat. So you can kind of see almost like he's like releasing like as if he's bowling and then bringing that arm up on top, creating a lot of body balance. He has to find a lot of body awareness, proprioception, like I mentioned earlier. Bill, what would you say some cues for this one would be?
Oof.
Let's talk about your foot first. What are you doing with that foot, that right foot that's staying there?
Well, I'm trying to keep push weight on it, but it can't be too turned. I think I have a tendency to externally rotate at the hip, so to have it go straight is a little bit hard for me.
Absolutely. Talk about our tripod, the tripod of our foot, like, you know, kind of creating force.
We're putting force on the ball of the foot, the toes are even to the lateral aspect of the foot and the heel all pushing down to create stability. This is hard. This is hard. It's hard even doing isolated, just the what I'm doing with the left shoulder, but then to combine that with the leg movement and then not to topple over, it doesn't look like much, but it's hard. It translates,
it's a good challenge.
It translates, though, I think, into more confidence and better stability when I'm moving around.
Absolutely. I think a big cue that I like to talk about with everybody again is, you know, if we did not have the ground, this exercise would be a little different or harder. And so the concept of creating force into the ground is also key for me. So, you know, his right foot, when he falls into it, we know we don't want to have, you know, a shift of the foot too much. The weight shifts, absolutely. But I don't want the big toe to come off. I don't want the heel to come off. You know, when we come back up, especially is when I want that tripod to be down and create force down in the ground. to help the momentum through the body. Another one that I'll talk to him about on this one is make sure his core is working with his limbs. So the limbs are really just distractions. We want to keep that core braced really the whole time. There's a concept of bracing and breathing, or maybe just bracing for enough to be able to do something crazy. If you were trying to lift up something really, really heavy, you might just do it one time and you brace almost extra hard. Or if you're doing something for a long time, you have to learn how to brace and breathe. But we do want our spine and pelvic area to mostly always be in support with our limbs moving.
I like how my shoulders are not curved forward. And I earlier on, had I done this, even at the most extreme range of motion, my shoulders would have been curved forward. So it's nice to see this in video.
Absolutely. Well, and that's another, really good point there, Bill, is that I just talked about, the legs and the leg power for a couple of minutes, but yet then Bill sees something totally different. And those are exercises that, we're working the full body there. There's a lot of action happening. When we go to the grocery store though, and we're walking around and we're grabbing things with our hands, there's a lot of action happening there too. So, my point being is that we want a lot of these muscles to be working on a regular basis. So having some of these exercises that do put benefit to the foot, to the knee, to the hip, to the core, to the arm. I'm not sure if I've ever done this on one of these webinars, but I've definitely sang that song of the hip bones connected to the knee bone to my clients numerous times, and everybody usually laughs, but then they're like, oh yeah, but that's kind of true, isn't it? And it is, everything works together. So a lot of times we want to do exercises that make the body have to work together. Yes, there's a time and place for somebody that maybe has some dysfunction in a certain spot. And that's anybody and everybody, again, whether it's we just had surgery, hip surgery, knee surgery. I have a lot of clients that have had, double hip replacements, and it's a process. You have to learn a whole new thing, especially if it was done a little while ago and there's actual hardware in there. So it's a big process there to get the body to work together, but finding those exercises is a great start.
Hey, we have a question from the audience. I think it's referring maybe to the, I'm not sure if it's the chest press with the weights hanging down. Yeah, the one
people usually
right
like
now.
That exercise, so that would make sense.
So Daniel wants to know, how many reps did you start with, and then how many did you progress to?
Bill, what would you say there first?
Jeez. I don't remember. I know we started out with very few, and you pushed me and made me do more, but there was some rest in between. And usually the pattern is a few movements, sometimes just passive, where you would move me and I would follow, and then with a little resistance, and then with more resistance and breaks between. But I don't know, 5 to 10 reps, rest, and repeat. Does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I think this can go into a lot of different directions when you're working on strength, when you're working on some endurance, when you're working on just activation. There's a lot of different kind of approaches that you can do, and I don't think any of them are wrong. It's really just about having a plan and what's best for the person.
Mitch
Bill,
has this tendency, sorry.
Go ahead. No, you're good.
Mitch has this tendency to say, oh, we only need 5 reps. But then, 3 of them don't count because he didn't like the form. Yeah. Or, he'll somehow miscount, but he only miscounts in one direction, which means I had to do more reps.
Yeah.
But
those messages that have big words and little words. Next to the big word, I said 5 good reps.
5 good reps, yeah. So he wants quality, and I think that's important. It's more important to have good form than it is to do it many times or to do it with a high weight. And I believe the importance of that now.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, I think Bill is, that's spot on right there. The importance of quality movement, move well, but move often. Is a line said by one of my mentors, and it's simple and effective there. We want to move often, but it's really, really important to know how to do it first. So if you're moving often and not moving well, technically that could be the reason as to why, you know, something is hurting, or, you know, an ailment somewhere. Overuse is a big factor there too. So you need to know what your capacity is. Can your capacity handle this? So, you know, what I would do is start with something really simple, like Bill said, a 5 to 10 rep count. And what does that tell your body, either directly afterwards or possibly later that night or the next couple of days? There's something called DOMS out there. It's delayed onset muscle soreness. And what that is just people getting sore a couple days later. And people are usually surprised with it, but it's normal. It's a long explanation, so we can go into that another time. But it's a normal thing. Sometimes that can have to do with the recovery of how you do things afterwards. You know, I've expressed this a little bit as well. Sleep and hydration and nutrition are extremely important. And that's not just for, you know, the way we physically look. It's also the way our mental, you know, process is going, and the way our body and hormones are being balanced too. So very, very important for recovery. So going back to that question, you know, just try to not do it to the point that you're overusing. Are you trying to get function and activation? Are you working on strength? So there's a couple different questions that you got to ask yourself first, and then you can probably give yourself a bigger answer.
I would say for those people who are new to exercise of a muscle group with FSH, err on the side of caution. You can always increase later. That way you'll have confidence in the process and you won't feel like you're hurting yourself. I had to develop trust in the process, trust in Mitch, before I began doing more reps and risking soreness.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
That's great. That's great advice. I was just about to ask that kind of question, because people do have concerns about doing exercise that can be damaging. And I know you had that fear early on, Bill. So, so I think as with all of this, there's not like a black and white answer how to tell the difference. But start gradually, listen to your body. I think clearly we can see from your workouts with Mitch the incredible benefit of working with someone who can observe you, who understands things about, you know, your muscular system, and understands things about the exercises to help
and understands about psychology and motivation.
Yes,
so
exactly.
Important.
That's really key. Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Well, that's good. I think we don't have any more questions at this time. So we've already burned up 45 minutes. So it's another great session with you guys. We really appreciate it. And I will bring back Beth. Although before we do that, I wanted to mention our Thursday webinars. We are moving to a monthly schedule. And we did send out a survey. We sent it out to all the webinar attendees last Thursday, but also it went out to everybody in our list of patients and family members. So if you enjoy these webinars, please do fill out the survey. We want to know what future topics are of great interest to you, so we can develop a great program and keep this going. All right, Beth, over to you.
Great. Well, thanks everyone for joining our FSHD Fitness Squad today. A very, very special thank you to the amazing squad leaders, Bill and Mitch. Woo! Squad leaders, you have become.
It was great.
They will be back next Monday afternoon at 3 o'clock for their final Monday session. But just know that these recordings will live on our website and on our YouTube channel. And you can always visit Mitch's Instagram to see their workout videos there too. His Instagram page is Mitch Wade, his first name, last name, Mitch Wade PDX. And if you're working with a trainer or physical therapist, I would really encourage you to share his Instagram page with them so that they can see these exercises and see how Bill's reaction is to them and how the muscles are, you know, a little bit different than able-bodied folks. So definitely spread the word. Wednesday evenings at 9 o'clock Eastern, you can catch our radio show celebrity, Tim Hollenbach. He's on Facebook Live. And also on Facebook Live Wednesday afternoons, Belinda Miller has a couple more of her chapters to read in her children's book, so you can join her there. I want to let everybody know this Saturday is World FSHD Day, Saturday, June the 20th. You can join people from all over the world to raise awareness for FSHD. Check out our toolkit on our website to download the World FSHD logo. If you are active on social media, you want to change out your avatar. And be sure to take your orange slice selfie, that's hard to say fast, and share that on social media using the hashtag World FSHD Day, and we will pick it up and we will share it as well. So that is this Saturday. I'm going to post a link to our toolkit in the chat, and hopefully you'll join us virtually on Saturday. Well, that's it, guys. Thank you again for an amazing day, and we'll say goodbye now, and just everyone take care, and we'll hopefully see you next Monday.
Thanks
All
very
right.
much.
Great, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.